Define the word leader.
A leader is a person who guides you through what you're going through.
A leader is a person you can look up to.
Person who takes charge of a group. People.
A leader is a person who commands followers.
A leader is a person you would look up to.
Someone who knows what to do without being told what to do.
Is someone who's just willing to go out there and just do it.
A leader is someone who can do 5 things at once and still be 2 steps ahead of the game.
A person who strives for the best for the people around him.
Could you name 2 people you feel fit your description?
Amy Poehler and my father.
Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr.
Barack Obama and George Bush.
Martin Luther King Jr. and Steve Jobs.
Like Obama or Beyonce.
I see my sister and the president as leaders.
Barack Obama and the likes of artists such as Daddy Yankee.
Beyonce and Zayn Malik, obviously.
God and my grandma.
There are so many ways to define a leader, just how there are multiple people that come in mind when these definitions are stated, like Martin Luther King, Bill Gates, Sukai, Abraham Lincoln, Gandhi, Oprah Winfrey, Malala Yousafzai, and many more. However, sometimes some leaders don't get the recognition they deserve. Sometimes people just forget how important a particular leader's work is to everyone's everyday life. For example, Mary Beth Tinker, a leader who you may not have thought of or known of. Mary Beth Tinker in her Supreme Court case, Tinker v. Des Moines, won the Supreme Court's ruling on February 24, 1969, in favor of the First Amendment rights for the students, a major contribution that would help students voice out their opinions. Besides engraving the fact that students do indeed have First Amendment rights, she also established her own legacy, that being the Tinker Tour. In the fall of 2013, the Tinker Tour helped her and others educate young people across the country about their freedom of voice, rights, and media. Without the leadership and legacy of Mary Beth Tinker, the First Amendment of the students may have been disregarded and forgotten.
But where did this influential woman come from? What made her become the woman she is today? Well, like most leaders, Mary Beth Tinker looked up to other leaders. She looked up to various members of her family and community, such as her parents. Just like her parents were the type of people who stood up for what they believed was right. They acted based on what they felt was right, even though some of their beliefs went against what the common belief was. The Tinker family was not only a family that stood by their morals and beliefs, but one that acted upon them. When Mary Beth Tinker and her family lived in Atlantic, Iowa, her father was a minister. However, the family had to leave town after her father caused great controversy in the town after he took a few African American kids from his church to the town's community swimming pool, even though the swimming pool was whites only. Mr. Tinker took the kids believing that by speaking up and by doing what he thought was right, he would be able to change the public's mind, but as Mary Beth Tinker said a few years later,
"As I found out in life, when you stand up and speak up, you don't always win."
The family received much hate and in turn had to move to Des Moines, Iowa, in order to escape the controversy.
Even though Mary Beth's father did not always succeed, he never gave up in standing up for what was right. In Des Moines, he continued to voice his opinion, he continued to fight for what he thought was right, and young Mary Beth Tinker definitely took note. Another person that had a huge influence on Mary Beth Tinker was her mother. Mrs. Tinker, just like her daughter, did stand up and fought for what she believed was right. When the Tinkers were living in Des Moines, Mary Beth Tinker's mother would work in the poorer neighborhoods as a psychiatrist. According to Mary Beth Tinker, her mother once went to the town city hall to ask for a better rat control in the poor areas of town after witnessing a rat run across a baby's crib.
Even Mary Beth Tinker's older sister, Bonnie, would stand up for what she believed was right. Bonnie once wrote in an essay called What the Emancipation Proclamation Means to Me, in where she described how great it was that the slaves had been free, but that more had to be done. In this essay, Bonnie Tinker shared her opinion about society having to do more about the discrimination against people of color and how it was important to stop it. Bonnie Tinker's essay was so inspirational that it actually won the NAACP essay contest. That same year, the Tinker family won the NAACP Family of the Year award in recognition for her family speaking up against what they believed to be wrong. One would think that such an inspirational family would be praised and loved, but that was not always the case. Turns out the Tinker family weren't always the most popular, since their beliefs at the time weren't all that popular or welcomed. Even their church wasn't all too happy with them. The church went to the extent of releasing her father as their minister just because he openly voiced his anti-discrimination views. Mary Beth Tinker, being only 10 at that time, remembered that her parents once again packing up and moving.
Though numerous obstacles were handed to Mary Beth Tinker throughout her journey, she still found a way to surpass them all. She eventually won a Supreme Court case that would help students all across the nation, since the ruling favored students do not shed their First Amendment rights at the schoolhouse door. Mary Beth Tinker's fight for student rights all started with the Vietnam War. At the time, the Vietnam War was still an ongoing struggle between the United States and Vietnam that began in 1957. 170,000 U.S. soldiers were stationed in Vietnam to prevent the spread of communism. Footages from the war were seen by the whole nation, which eventually caused Mary Beth Tinker, alongside with her brother, John Tinker, and their friend, Christopher Eckhart, and a few other students to peacefully take a stand against the Vietnam War. They opposed the ongoing war in hopes to halt the U.S. involvement in it and to mourn the dead on all fronts of the war. On December 1965, Mary Beth Tinker and a group of students wore black armbands with peace signs to their school in Des Moines as a symbol of their disagreement with the war. When the school became informed of the meaning of the black armbands Tinker and the students wore, the school asked them to either take them off or they were going to be sent home. The students who refused to take off the armbands were eventually suspended until New Year. This suspension then caused the students to sue the school, claiming the school had violated their First Amendment rights, which led to the Tinker versus Des Moines Supreme Court case. At last, after the 4-year journey through the Supreme Court, they ruled 7-2 in favor of the First Amendment rights for students.
For those who are unaware of what exactly the First Amendment says, it states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Tinker and the rest of the students argued that they had the First Amendment rights just like everyone else in court. As the students wore the black armbands, they were exercising their right of freedom of speech by expressing opinions with clothing choice. The freedom of speech rights were protected under the First Amendment, and with that being said, it became their main corroboration in court. In winning this case, all students could confidently say that their rights didn't end as soon as they entered school. But who should we thank for this? Who should we give credit for doing this? Mary Beth Tinker, that's who. She not only did what no other 13-year-old would do, she stood up and fought for the rights of all students across the U.S.
The court lasted for 4 years, making it quite a long journey for Mary Beth Tinker. However, she decided to take her journey further. She became an advocate for various rights of youth in many areas of health and education. Mary Beth Tinker also started the Tinker Tour alongside with Mike Highstand, a project in which they go around the country and promote freedom of speech and freedom of press to youth that may feel voiceless or that does not know of their guaranteed rights. According to Mary Beth Tinker, she started the Tinker Tour after being informed that 1/3 of Americans believed that the president had the final word in decisions, and that only 1/3 of Americans can name the 3 branches of the U.S. government. As a result of the information, she wanted to do more and found she is able to do that with the Tinker Tour. In the fall of 2013, the Tinker Tour reached out to as many as 20,000 students over the Southeast, Midwest, and East Coast. In the spring of 2014, the Tinker Tour visited several other schools in different cities across the nation, in where they educated the young and old about several topics. As of now, the Tinker Tour continues to spread knowledge and makes appearances to schools and special events at least twice a month.
There is no doubt that February 24, 1969 was a monumental day for students across the nation. The 26th of February was the day that Mary Beth Tinker's Supreme Court case, Tinker vs. Des Moines, won the case in favor for the First Amendment rights for students. If the Supreme Court's ruling had been any different, students would not be able to voice out their opinion. It was that day that it was settled. Students do not shed their constitutional rights at the schoolhouse doors. But Mary Beth Tinker did not think it was enough just winning a landmark Supreme Court case. Instead, she started the Tinker Tour in order to educate young people across the nation about their First Amendment rights. Without the leadership and legacy of Mary Beth Tinker, the First Amendment of students may have been disregarded and forgotten. Imagine if this woman had not taken it upon herself to become the voice of an entire generation. Has she not decided to lead students into taking their rights and demand to be heard, respected, and protected under law? Our world would be a lot different. We wouldn't be able to express ourselves freely in school, and without self-expression, how would it even be possible to learn who we are in the very place we are meant to gain knowledge? Mary Beth Tinker is a leader whose legacy is great and who affected even those unaware of her story.